We're now going to look at beams. In this case, we will have beams around the carport. With these, we can draw over the outside of the line. They don't have to be in the correct position as long as they're the right length. If you had specific positions for beams, you might want to move up to layer 1, especially if they're in rooms, and just work out where your beams are going to go. For example, from the end point here to in between the two windows there. This is why it's important to know where your windows are going. So this is just a temporary line. We can delete that later on, and we could put a beam over the top of that. I will, around the outside here, I'm just going to draw over the top of the perimeter, and that will give me my correct beam lengths. Now we can see we've got a very long length on the front here. If I go to my inquire distance, I can check the distance for that beam, so 9.22 meters. Inquire again, just here. As much as I didn't draw straight, I always work on delta x and delta y, so 3.1 meters. So you may want to put two beams in here, or one beam all the way across, just depending on how your suppliers will look at those items. So first of all, before we actually put some beams on the drawing, let's have a look at the beam command. Third row down, first item, beam. At the moment it's set to hanger. If I go B for goes to barge, roll the wheel on the mouse, comes down to beam. So you need to set these up for all different types of beams, steel beams, LVLs, straight timber beams. It's your choice, but a bit of thought does need to go into this. Next, and it's asking us to pick a position for the beam. If I pick on the corner here and down to the corner at the bottom, it's telling me that I have a distance of 3.1 meters. This 3.1 meters is actually from this point horizontal to the other side. This is the same as what we had with wall plates and with all items. If you want to draw something on an angle, you would have to right mouse click. So I'll just cancel that again. Beam, we'll look at hangers in a while. Next, pick a point, right mouse click, and then pick the other point, and you can see now it's 3.324 meters. What it's telling us at the top here, that is the actual length of the beam, and then we can pick a size for the beam. Now next to size, this has the word beam.text, which means that I've also already got some values for the sizes for this beam, and I'll go into that in just a moment. The other items here is material. Put whatever you like there. Code, again, whatever you wish. Cost center, this is mainly for data build and the likes, but you can put a cost center in, but it doesn't come into the calculations later on when we go to the Excel spreadsheet as far as sorting goes. User, this is your user size, but we must remember here that there is a tick next to user, and this says use height times width. What this is stating is that the user is going to use these values below, the height times width values. So 200 by 38, as much as this says 0 at the moment, the 200 by 38 will override that once this is complete. The count is the number of beams. In this case there's only one, but if for any instance you're doing a double beam, you could put two there. Global lists, this is quite important. This is a new item. If you've used the program before, you wouldn't have seen this. If this is ticked, it's the old way of doing stuff, where one list has everything in it. But with leaving the tick out, it means that our lists are very short, and they're lists per item. So each item would have its own lists for material, code, cost center, and user size. Multiple, we'll look at this with hangers, but now for single, it's dropped a single beam in. Down the bottom left, pick start point for a 200 by 38 beam. So there's some other beams of this size, we could keep putting those beams in. So intersection, intersection. Let's put a beam in straight away. Right click, and we can start a new beam. So the new beam, I might be using this one which we drawn before. Draw straight over the top, endpoint to endpoint. 3.43, 200 by 38. You can see the other one, 200 by 38, was being put in already, but the tick at the top says use what's here. You might want a different size beam. So as much as this has the beam text, we could put in here 200 UB16. Don't know what that means, I've just invented it. Single. And what we have now, just right mouse click out of there, is the beam is a 200 UB16 at 3.6. You notice this went straight across because I hadn't right mouse clicked to go on the angle. So if that happens, don't try and change your beams. Select what was there, go back to your beam command. So end, right mouse click, end, 3.5. So the UB has replaced the time sign in the middle. So if you ever do put something in the middle here, it needs to be replaced. So in this case I'm going to go back to the 200 by 38 single, and it's put those values in. If I was putting beams around this whole area, I might go endpoint to here, and it said that's manually. So this has got a 6.12 span, but this is greater than what's in the list. Now as far as the list goes, I'm going to cancel out of here and just go into my edit files. We're looking for a text file called beam. So beam text. So here's all my spans, 2.4, 2.7, 3.3. These you create yourself. They're not set sizes. This file isn't in the data directory, so it went up to 5.7. So anything greater than 5.7, like we found, comes up manually. So 5.7 is a 300 by 50, or 150 by 38 for 2.7s, etc. But what would be best in this instance, I'm just going to get rid of these two beams, is to use your worst span. Beam, next. I'm just going to go from the endpoint to the endpoint here. So that's a 175 by 38 according to my tables. Like I said, these are tables I've invented myself. And single. Let's put that in. I can now, if I wanted to, draw straight on top of this. I'm actually going to draw on the other side so people can see where this goes. And that's a 6.3 175 by 38. I've kept the same size. And then down the side of my garage, keeping the same sizes again. Right mouse click, and now I can pick sizes for a different beam. There may have been a beam across the center here, in which case I'd go intersection. I might come right across to go onto the wall plate to give myself a bit more length. 1 point. The other point, still a 175 by 38 single, and there's my beams.